Hey everyone, it's Marla. Welcome back to Twinstrology and happy new moon. I want to talk to you today about the energy of the new moon and what I feel coming in with it, which is how this new moon is really helping us transmute guilt and shame. So, to talk about this, let's just take a look at the energy of Virgo for a moment. So, Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, is the energy of discernment. And so Virgo analyzes, judges, categorizes, organizes information, puts that information into perspective, which is, a handy thing to have. However, when that gets when that turns into a more negative energy, we take that discernment energy and we turn it on ourselves and we become judgmental of the self. We become very self-critical. In turn, we begin to feel unworthy. And then we develop these perfectionist tendencies in order to cover up the fact that we're unworthy. This is so important right now because the masculine energy is really being guided to heal this energy of guilt and shame. So at the Pisces new moon, we were talking about forgiveness. And I made a short video where I wanted to clarify some things from that video. And this guilt and forgiveness, they're like two sides of the same coin in a way. And I wanted to explain that when I'm talking about this stuff, guilt and forgiveness, or the other way around, I'm not talking about the things that you have experienced with your twin in this incarnation. What I'm really trying to get at is existential guilt. Existential guilt is inherent in all humans. It's not something that we've done. It's not about an act that made us feel guilty for something, but it's really about feeling fallible, being able to accept that we make mistakes. We hurt people and we hurt ourselves when we don't always act from our heart or we don't always do the right thing. That's the kind of guilt that I'm talking about here. As we awaken and we become more sensitive to things, this existential guilt can create like really deep levels of shame in us because we feel guilty for the state that the world is in. We can feel helpless because we want to save everybody, or we feel insignificant because we want to affect change, but it just feels so hopeless at times. And these feelings can become so overwhelming that we just block everything out. I think this is a lot of what the masculine is experiencing, is this feeling that it's so overwhelming that I'm just going to block everything out. I'm not going to feel anything. Often this guilt is blamed on religion, especially the Abrahamic religions, because those religions have kind of this core philosophy that humans are sinners and that we have to be forgiven by God. But really, existential guilt existed before religion existed. And even if there was no religion, we would still be dealing with existential guilt because, as I said, it's just a part of being human. The misconception I want to point out here, though, is the belief that we require God's forgiveness, when what we really require is our own forgiveness, because God already forgives us. So, what really needs healing right now for our masculine is this inability to process all this guilt. I'm really, please understand that this is a collective energy and it's being transmuted right now because this is bringing us into a higher state of consciousness. Because, well, guilt and shame is one of the lowest vibratory frequencies. And so letting go of that can significantly increase our vibration. So let's talk a little bit about some of the ways that humans deal with guilt. We're going to talk about 3 ways. The first way is neurotic guilt. In neurotic guilt, we let the guilt define us. We obsess over it. we beat ourselves up and we tell ourselves that we're terrible people. The second type is to deny the guilt. With denial, acknowledging the guilt is vulnerable. So we take no responsibility for our actions. We can't face the fact that we're imperfect, and instead we blame everybody around us. The third way is avoidance of guilt. Again, there's no responsibility for your actions. To acknowledge that you should feel guilty is too vulnerable. So you pretend that everything's okay and you downplay your actions or whatever it is that's creating shame in you. You'll notice that with these, there is a lack of responsibility for our own actions. I'm sure that you realize by now with what I'm saying that this existential guilt creates a lot of shadow, especially when we're in denial. And let's face it, most of us live in one of these states of denial when it comes to this. You can probably also think about a lot of ways this energy is being played out within the collective right now. The beauty of this, though, is that with existential guilt, when it's not being denied, it offers us an opportunity to learn and grow. The National Institute of Health defines it thus: existential guilt arises when one is distracted from or impeded from exerting one's will and responsibility in living up to one's unique potential. Wow. So this is why we need to transmute this right now. The self-criticism can prevent us from reaching our full potential and living our unique service to humanity. So when we're ready to grow past these blocks with guilt, we're ready to acknowledge our imperfections. I'm human. I make mistakes. Sometimes I choose wrong action, even though I know what right action is. But when I take responsibility for my actions and I'm willing to look at my actions, I can make amends. I can grow from the experience. I can acknowledge that my mistakes are not the sum total of who I am. And I can get up tomorrow and work to be a better person and to do better. So now let's bring in the energy of forgiveness. And this is the Pisces energy. So if you have your nodal axis in Pisces, Virgo, or the 6th or 12th house, or if you have Pluto in Virgo, this video is going to be really helpful to you to understand some of these things. So yeah, Pisces, which is the opposite sign of Virgo, is the energy of forgiveness, of surrender, of relaxing about all this, and just accepting that we're human. And the energy of Pisces, you know, we're more connected to who we are spiritually. And when we're in that spiritual nature, we don't need to be so hard on ourselves. We realize that this life, this incarnation, it's just an experience. It's not even real. You know, it's not even truly reality. So why be so obsessive about everything? So like I mentioned earlier, when I'm talking about forgiveness, it starts with self-forgiveness of existential guilt. I think even before we start petitioning God for forgiveness, we need to work on this inner piece of self-forgiveness. Otherwise, we can't even accept that we deserve God's forgiveness. Someone commented on my Pisces New Moon video that forgiveness doesn't exist. And I have to disagree with that. I feel if we believe that forgiveness doesn't exist, then we're in some kind of denial for this guilt that we feel. Every spiritual teacher speaks about forgiveness, including Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, and the Prophet Muhammad. If we don't believe in forgiveness, then how can we bring this forgiveness to ourselves? I suppose we could believe that we don't need forgiveness for anything, but that doesn't ring true for me. And I think that, humanity still has too much shadow that they're dealing with that requires a self-forgiveness to just kind of want to delete that piece of the puzzle. I think one of the things that can happen too is it's much easier to forgive other people than it is to forgive ourselves. We can hold ourselves to a much higher standard, but I think that creates an imbalance because, first of all, it can create codependency, but it also still holds us in this energy of self-shaming, where it's like, oh, you deserve forgiveness, but I don't deserve forgiveness. So we need to work on letting that go. On the other hand, when we forgive ourselves, we're apt to be gentler and just more compassionate with other people because, hey, nobody's perfect. If we can witness our own imperfections, then we don't hold other people up to, expecting them to be perfect all the time either. So clearing this piece of existential guilt is really core to helping us clear the separation wound. First of all, it's healing the Lilith wound. Now, we can feel abandoned or believe that others will abandon us because we aren't worthy of love and acceptance. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy then. Also, when we're healing the Lilith wound, Lilith felt abandoned by God, but God never abandons us. We abandon ourselves and then we turn our back on God. Turning our back on God is a symptom of carrying this shame and guilt and not feeling worthy of God. So we put up a boundary to God. We act like we don't need God. We could also say that we put up a wall. We turn our back on our true nature. I know not everybody likes to use the term God. So see it as rejecting our true nature, which is our true self that is aligned with our soul energy. Also want to make this clarification here about this being the masculine energy. Is it because men are inherently bad and women need to forgive them? No, of course not. But this is like such a major theme in our society right now where men just get shamed and blamed for everything. Of course, that's a projection and it's a denial of our own guilt and shame. We've been everything. We've been men, we've been women, we've been black, we've been white, we've been brown, we've been every shade in between. We've been all different kinds of religions. We've lived in all different locations of the world. So to get caught up on blaming another person is not going to be serving us. And as I said, it's preventing us from looking within and healing our own part of us that contributed to whatever society's ills are. But yeah, sometimes we just have to remember that these extremes and polarities are just helping us pull out the shadow and express things that maybe people have been feeling subconsciously for a long time. And those subconscious energies just fester until they get spoken. So I guess we have to be somewhat accepting of people expressing this while not identifying too much with the kind of core energy of those kind of beliefs. So the way I see it is it's more of masculine because masculine takes action. And a lot of times our guilt stems from taking a wrong action. Even if that wrong action was accidental, it can leave us in the state of guilt. The feminine, on the other hand, is more of the process that happens before we take action. But the more that we forgive, the more we are allowing and in the flow with life. So how we can kind of see this playing out within ourselves or even within the collective is the creative principle, which is the feminine, is now wanting to go into creating, to begin manifesting. But the masculine is still being inhibited because of this guilt and shame to take action, because of an inner fear of failure, rejection, or imperfection. We have to accept that we're worthy of love and that we're worthy of being able to create the life of our dreams and to have all the abundance that we desire. So, not only will healing these levels of guilt release us from separation, but it releases the inhibitions to manifestation. This allows the inner masculine and feminine to work together in unity. And that in turn is going to manifest the union within the physical. This ability to create in this way is our divine birthright, and it's given to us through divine grace. So it's already there, it already exists. We just have to let down our walls and let it in. So thank you so much for listening. If you would like more information about me, or you would like to book a reading or a session with me, I will link to my website below. Until next time, I'm sending you all a lot of love.